Welcome into a brand new edition of the 06010 ESPN Communications podcast. I'm your host, Alex Feuz, and we're joined by a very special guest, ESPN MLB analyst, none other than Doug Glanville. And Doug, we have some exciting news to share on the podcast today. You will be on the call with Michael Kay for the London series on ESPN on June 9th. First pitch for the Mets and Phillies will be at 10 a.m. again on June 9th. What was your reaction when you first heard this news that you'll be traveling over to London and working with Michael Kay?
I'll tell you, I was a bit stunned, quite frankly. I mean, I don't know, maybe blindsided in a good way. It's like, oh, wait a minute, this was an option? This is amazing. So a lot of stuff went through my head. Phil Orleans, who runs that event side with baseball, he kind of calls me. And it was very like sheepish about it, like low key, like, oh, thinking about like adding you to London. What do you think about that? So I was like, London is in like United Kingdom, like, so because there's like a new London, Connecticut. So I figured, right, why not down? So yeah, and I knew that this game had gone on last couple of years, and I think the thing that I kind of remembered about it is, look, I have family in London, in the London area, and so a little history is my father grew up in Trinidad and Tobago, as a British colony. There's some of my family, my dad and his two brothers, two of the brothers kind of went to London, and then one came back and one stayed. And my uncle who stayed there had two daughters and then eventually came to the United States. So there's always this triangle between US, UK, and Trinidad. And so two of my cousins from, that uncle and the other uncle are still in England. One moved back somewhat recently. It was always her dream because she was born there. And so that was really exciting because the idea that I could actually go and see family and also just enjoy baseball. So yeah, I had to digest it all, but I love the fact that baseball's going in these international fronts and really expanding the great game that we all love. And for that reason, yeah, it's great to be part of it.
Yeah, this will be the last of the four MLB World Tour games this year. I know Major League Baseball went to Seoul, South Korea, the Dominican Republic, Mexico City, and now London. How can these international games help grow and expand the MLB's audience outside of the United States?
Well, I just see only upside, right? Because you're exposing people to the sport. You have ambassadors like Chase Utley's in London. You have people that are really working on celebrating the game. And I think the fact that the game is so multicultural, the fact that players hail from Korea and different places, the fact, that we can go and be in a lot of these great players' backyards and actually celebrate the game. When you have a figure that represents that country or that culture, that's more of a win-win. So I see it as something that's always been part of the fabric of baseball. When you think about the expansion, beyond the U.S. borders, how it's, continued to be celebrated. And of course, like a lot of these countries have their own Major League Baseball equivalent, right? Japan and Mexico. And I played in Puerto Rico winter ball for 2 years. So I have always appreciated that the game can be inspired by all these different flavors and cultures and tastes and interests. And some of the iconic players are from these homelands. So I think it's a great aspect of baseball. And it goes back, look, Jackie Robinson played in Japan back in 1950s, right? So you talk about players that actually were ambassadors. We're bringing it full circle.
Now, you mentioned you have family in the London area. Is this your first time going, or have you been before?
I've been a few times. It's been a while though. I went back when my cousin got married. So I saw, in fact, Mamma Mia, the play in London.
Wow.
So I have been, but it's been a big gap since I've last been, and also just seeing it through a different world, baseball. It's funny, I talked to my cousin, we did a Zoom call, and I kept saying, yeah, we'll get there eventually, and kids, everybody's busy. And I never really thought that baseball would be the way that to bring me there, because it's not like baseball's, huge there. My dad being played cricket. So I always associate Britain in terms of ball bat as in cricket, but it's cool to bring and harmonize family history, opening up new frontiers, and also baseball.
Did you ever try cricket or no?
Oh yeah, I've messed around. Not like I would play a full match, so to speak, but I've taken a couple swings. Very different. It's a little bit different, yeah.
Now, have you talked to Michael about working together? I believe this is the first time you two are going to be calling a game together. And if so, how can you build that rapport leading into the big matchup?
Well, I saw him. We did a Yankee game earlier this year, and I saw him. We talked a little bit about it, and very excited. I love Michael Kay. He's fantastic. I was on radio with him for many years when ESPN Radio. Remember, we had the different satellites: ESPN New York, Chicago. So I used to do a regular show, Michael Kay and Stephen A. Smith, on ESPN Radio in New York. So we did have a little bit of a connection there, and yeah, I know his work. We cross paths. I sent him messages and stuff. So I feel like it's gonna be great because he does a fantastic job. And the thing about Michael Kay is like the storytelling. He also can host shows where he brings in guests. He's done this, Yes Network, and really can dive into the deeper content. And I love that versatility because call the game, they'll give you the color, they'll give you the flavor, but then they'll come around and be able to dive deeper into the personal side. And for this international experience, I think that's a great fit.
And you mentioned storyteller in your Twitter bio. Your first word in there is storyteller. Why did you choose that to be the first word in your Twitter bio?
It's something that I really have a passion for because baseball in and of itself is poetic. And my relationship with the game has always been through stories. I go back to my brother who taught me baseball effectively, 6, 7, 8 years older. And what we used to do is after we played our respective games, we'd come back home and then tell stories. We'd say, okay, this is what happened. We'd walk you through first inning, runner got picked off and we got our own color. We literally did this like all summer, all season. Once we at least were, I was old enough to play somewhat at his level, right? So I always associate with a lot of the beauty of the game in how the stories are told because baseball is so patient, right? There's so much time in between to reflect. You have an off season, you come back, and within that, it's so much richness about not only the current events but the history behind it is woven through how we tell the narrative of the game, the stories of the game. So that's how I relate, and I think my dad used to write poetry all the time and as his free time, and I always think of it in that light. So when I think about what I try to contribute to the game, and one of my favorite aspects is being able to bring and elevate those stories for an audience, for fans, and just for keeping the stories going, the future going.
In addition to other roles here at ESPN, you're also the lead MLB analyst for Sunday Night Baseball on the radio. You'll be on the call this Sunday with Boog Sciambi, and it's Cubs Cardinals. Looking ahead at that, you've worked with Boog for many years now. How did you build such a great relationship with Boog? I've seen you in person this year at Sunday night games, and you two are so fun to be around, and you two are almost like brothers in a sense. How did you kind of grow that relationship with one another?
I'll tell you. Well, I really got to meet him probably over 25 years ago because we had some mutual friends from Teaneck, New Jersey that he got to know. And I think that was the icebreaker when we first met. I was still playing. And so over time, we started realizing there's a lot of ways we see the game similarly. Like we're both Mike Schmidt fans, right? We were Philadelphia Phillies. So we had that kind of history. And so I remember us both like kind of not meeting Schmidt for the first time, but seeing him once. And like, we both were like, wait a minute, are we like in second grade again? So I think there was a connection to how we came to love the game. And I think the thing I appreciate about Jon Sciambi, and I call him John a lot mostly, is that he keeps you on your toes as an analyst. Technically, I am the why and the how, right? I played, I know all this stuff, right? But Jon has a lot of analysts in him because he researches. And I guess in some ways, if you were kind of worried about it, you'd be like, oh, well, he's stepping on my toes or he's going into all these other areas. But now I have to actually study, I actually love it because it keeps me sharp. And I can't just rely on like, well, I played and I just know that a curveball, I have to actually really pay attention. And it's made me evolve as not looking at it as like old school, new school, but actually, keeping up with what the relevance that I need to communicate the color of the game. So that part is great. And then, we hang out, we'll talk and just have a good time, just how we see the world. So it was easy, it really is easy. And brotherhood describes it really well. I love Jon Sciambi as a brother, and we go into it But when you're working a job, if you want to call it a job, where I'm sitting there and I'm just talking to a friend for 3 hours about baseball, all the wacky stuff we even think about, it is really amazing. So every time I think about what I do for a living, I just say, this is such a gift. It is. It really is a gift. And to do it with friends is even better.
What's your favorite moment on the air with Jon?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I know, one of the things, maybe it's not even always on the air. It's like beforehand when we kind of we're doing our prep and we kind of kick around a few things. And then there's those moments, maybe it might happen in game, but it's like, I might bring up a stat, he brings up something. It's like, oh, wow, that synthesis of like, oh, we were thinking the same thing, because it's like, I might bring out some, real deep metric that he's usually very well versed in. He's like, or I add to something he said, because I'm a research fiend and I go in a lot of data, and most of it I don't use like in real time. I won't be like, oh, with 2 strikes, he's hitting 155. I'll do that here and there, but it's about context. And I think with Jon, he really can dive into that. And I think he knows when we match up that way about data, that's really fascinating. It's a good moment for us in terms of, getting to all the other aspects of the game.
Now, Doug, this is my favorite part of every interview I do. It's called the Feuz Fast Five. It's 5 quick questions. Are you ready to play?
Oh, yeah.
First one, you played in the Cape Cod Baseball League for the Wareham Gatemen.
What
was your favorite? Yeah, that's right. What was your favorite moment playing on the Cape Cod Baseball League?
Oh, wow. Man, I love that league. And I could go on and on, but it's supposed to be lightning round, right? So just shout out to the Donahue family, my host family. Shout out. Love you guys. Probably selfishly is tie. It was we were down by 1. It might have been the bottom of the 9th. It sounds good, but it was definitely the bottom of the last inning where we were about to get knocked out. Finals, 1-1, winner takes all. And I had like 1 or 2 home runs during the regular season. And there's a pitcher for Ohio State. I think his name was Tim Smith. This guy, he had a slider. It was really like a slurve. I'd never seen anything like it, and nobody could hit this guy. But at the end of the season, he was tiring. He was used a lot, and he started to slow down. So I think they bring him in maybe to close out the game. I keep in mind, I have 2 home runs, maybe. And so we're down to our last out. He throws this, and I hit a home run to center field, and it's just like, what happened, right? So I go on the base, and you can see the opposing manager. He just like slams his chair, and it was like, that was like the stars aligned, man. Like, didn't have much power certainly that summer, but I was a good hitter, but a home run wasn't my game. And I hit a home run to straightaway center off a pitcher that I couldn't even smell the whole season long. So that was definitely one of the top moments that summer.
When you first joined ESPN as an MLB analyst, was there someone here at ESPN that you leaned on for advice? And if so, who was it?
Wow. A real great mentor, even though we're peers, Eduardo Perez. I know we should say Perez because that's really the right way to say it. But Eduardo was a real wonderful mentor very quickly. And it wasn't that he was there that much longer, but he had some experience and he showed me a lot of ropes, right? He was, here's how you use the server to pull up video during the game. I mean, he just like opened the notebook, like, here you go. I thought that was really cool. And there's some great colleagues, of course. One quick funny story is, so Buster Olney was there, and my first day where I have the meeting and the production meeting, Buster, I don't know where I'm going. It's a huge campus, and I'm like building 4 or whatever, So I totally have no idea where I'm going, and the meeting's coming up. So I'm with Buster, and he's like, "Hey, don't worry, kid, just stick with me. You'll be all right." So I go with Buster. I'm following around. We go, and I don't know. I'm just blindly following him. And we go to the cafeteria, he gets a drink, he comes back, and we're like 15 minutes late to the first meeting. And he's like, "Don't worry, you're with me," right? And I was like horrified, right? This is my first meeting. So Buster, of course, over time, we became good friends, and I love Buster. So years later, the new now Digital Center 2 is open and all this crazy stuff. And I realized Buster hadn't really been on campus that much with the new stuff. I live in Connecticut, so I'm there all the time. And so Buster walks out and he's like, "I don't know where to go." And I was like, "You know what? You're okay, kid. You're with me." so so I got to walk him and give him directions for a chain.
That's
And that's
amazing.
the gift of being there for 15 years. It's really something.
Now, this Saturday, you'll be going to Cooperstown and playing in a special East versus West game this Saturday. And you're going to be in the lineup playing for which
Ooh,
team? I know Joe Torre's managing one team, Raleigh Fingers is managing the other. Which manager are you playing for? Do you know yet?
I have no idea, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Chris Young is like our captain. CC Sabathia is the other. I know the roster, and I'm glad David Price is on my team because I don't feel like facing someone who retired like last year. I mean, that's not a good idea. And Monet Davis is on my team, so I feel like we got the vibe going. So I don't know really what's happening on the managerial side, but yeah, I'm in this. I can't believe it. I'm in this game. It's
When
shock.
was the last time you swung a bat?
Well, I did swing. I did swing this year in the batting cage for a couple rounds. Mostly, I didn't really want to, but it was one of those moments when my son and his friend on the team, they were talking a little bit of trash. I was like, you know what? Let me just show these young guys a little something. Let me like. Of course, I broke my bat within like a couple of minutes, but I eventually slowed down the velocity and started getting the head out. But that's about it. I hadn't touched a bat. I played in Hall of Fame 13 years ago, and that went pretty well. But I was like 40, years old, 41, so I got a few hits. This is going to be interesting. But the way it kind of came about is I worked on the exhibit that we're unveiling on Friday. Very excited about that. And I worked on the task force and the team. And I know they had mentioned some Hall of Fame game. I was like, oh yeah, they used to do that. Orioles, Yankees, So I'm thinking major league teams are coming, and I was like, I kind of put it out of my mind. And then they're like, oh, let me send you the rosters. I'm like, what do you mean rosters? Like, the Yankees? Like, so I look, I'm like, why is my name on this roster exactly? So they're like, yeah, you're actually playing in the game. I was like, oh, okay. So I'm putting a alert out there to all the listeners. If someone knows how to get in shape in 48 hours, you can email me or send me a tweet about that, because that's what it's going to take. So I could blow out a couple of legs and arms if it's possible, but then again, it's like, you know what? I don't have to rest up for the next game because this is it. So I'm going to go ahead and, do what I can do. But and by the way, everybody's talking. Like I saw Tony Gwynn Jr. is in this, and everybody's like, the question that everyone is asking each other is, so how hard are you going to play, man? How hard are you going to play? So that's we don't know. I don't think there's been an answer, but I think there's a lot of questions.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to see photos and videos that come out of that day. It's going to be awesome. And if you haven't been to Cooperstown, New York, it's one of the best spots out there in the whole world. Number 4 for the Fast Five. Who's an exciting player that you've got to see already this year that MLB should get behind?
Ooh, wow. I know I'm turning the Fast Five into the Slow Five here, but I
You're good.
don't. There's Man, there's so many. I'm trying to think of some of the young guys. I've seen. Let's see. I've seen a lot of Braves, a lot of some Mets, the Phillies. I'm thinking of the Padres. Uh, yeah, Jackson Merrill is kind of fun. He's kind of fun to watch. I think of the kind of the young guys. That's just the first thing because there's obviously a lot of great players. But I like Merrill's approach. He's calm, he's chill. Seems like Jackson is the name you need to have in this game these days.
Yeah.
And play like here's a shortstop drafted, and then he's in center field, and he's already like a plus defender out there. And he's quiet, so it's not like the firepower. He just kind of does the job. It's a good eye. Wyatt Langford, very exciting. This guy got ridiculous power. I know it's like slow start and all that, but there's so many great young players that I've really enjoyed checking out. But the veterans, you can't sleep on the Braves' whole lineup basically, and the Phillies. I mean, what a 1-2 punch those teams are.
Yeah. And Doug, for the last one for the Fast Five, you played in the Ivy League. Who would you consider one of the greatest players that played in the Ivy League?
Ooh, I might need a list for this one because you have Lou Gehrig's, and I mean it's
Yeah.
hard to beat that. Maybe the modern era. That's a good question. Like Chris Young, right? The Yale Princeton dude. Kyle Hendricks. Craig Breslow. I'm just thinking of names right now.
Yeah.
Mark Johnson at Dartmouth. Um, Trying to think of who else. I played against some of these guys in my heyday in the Ivy world. So it's not a big group. That's why when we look at each other, we're always, even though Princeton and Penn, like we want to, we got a little like tension there because, big time rivalry. But anytime I see someone from Princeton, I'm like, got to give them love. There's not a ton of us out there. I know Mike Hill from the MLB played at Harvard, and he, I think he probably might have played against them at some point. So we got to give each other loves. And I don't know what's going on, man. People are entering the portal from Ivy, fourth year, especially with COVID. Like Caitlin Chen over there, Princeton going to UConn. Everybody's just like jet setting right now. So Ivy's, building some good enough athletes that they're taking it to even another level. So that is kind of cool to see.
Well, Doug, thank you so much for your time today. You're one of the best in the business. I always enjoy catching up with you, and you can hear Doug this Sunday on Sunday Night Baseball, Cubs Cardinals, and then just a few weeks away, you'll be over in London working with Michael Kay on June 9th at 10 a.m. on ESPN for the London series. Thanks again, Doug.
Alex, thanks a lot. Great to be on.